Hello, lovely humans. I'm Luna Robbie, and you are listening to Sex Stories, a podcast of personal histories where we learn from each other and practice deep, non judgmental listening in order to co create a more loving world. If you want to express your love for this show, you can find ad free episodes on Patreon, get personal with me on OnlyFans, sign up to be a guest, and check out the awesome brands to support our show. Links are in the description below or visit sexstoriespodcast.com. Now, please enjoy this episode. Our guest today is a 51-year-old straight man. He is here to talk about married dating, discretion in dating, non monogamy, and different motives for joining a dating site while married. With us today from Toronto, Canada, is the Chief Strategy Officer of Ashley Madison. Welcome, Paul Keable.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time.
Okay, we're gonna have so much fun, and I do want to ask you the shame-o-meter question and where you fall today. But first, I imagine, like, I'm so curious about what it's like to be you and introduce yourself to people with your job because I feel like there are probably some very well, I don't know, like, I wonder if you get the same interesting reactions that I do. Assuming someone knows what Ashley Madison is.
Correct. It is an interesting job to have, and it's not something I go around telling the world as the first thing about me, not out of any shame or guilt. Just simply, I don't know if it's necessarily the most interesting about me. But when people do find out, the reaction I get is usually not the one people anticipate. Whenever I'm at a social event, party, some such thing, and somebody discovers that I'm that guy, usually somebody sidles up to me a little later in the evening because they have questions. They wanna know, "Is it real? Like, are there women there? Like, what's happening?" There's this level of curiosity because so many people have seen the various documentaries about us. They've heard about us over the years, our ups, our downs, and for a lot of people, I think it potentially addresses a problem they've been struggling with and they don't know how to solve it. And they think, well, maybe there's some veracity to what we've been talking about for 20 plus years.
Ah, that's so interesting. Okay, so it's a whole mix of reactions too. What's the like most common like polite reaction from those people who like sidle up to you later? Like what's the or is it just different flavors of covers?
It depends on who's coming up to me. I get very different questions from the gender perspective. Men generally are, is it real? Are women really there? Are they doing that? And that question is born out of combination of naivete, I like to think, but realistically, a misogynistic trend within society that kind of tells us that good women don't do these things. And we can get into the reality of that.
Oh, interesting. Whoa. Okay. Wait, because my brain was like across any dating site, I feel like I hear from a lot of gentlemen like, I don't even know if she's real. I don't know if this is and on different dating sites in the past, I have had men write to me, you seem too smart to be real. Or like, we're having such an engaged conversation. I think you're a man like catfishing me. And so I thought that's what okay, so wow. Okay, interesting. Okay, okay. Lock me into your train of thought.
So there's an element of misogyny that exists, particularly in Western culture, when it comes to women and dating, particularly in the realm of Ashley Madison, because so much of what's predicated on our business is people doing discrete activities, often, at least in the beginning of our business, really centered on infidelity affairs. And people were like, wait a minute, a married woman is out here looking for, in essence, a casual, maybe ongoing, but primarily intimate focused type relationship. And people are like, for real? And I said, if our business
Yeah.
truly was a sham, if this didn't exist, I don't think we'd still be here 23 years later, still in business, given everything we've been through. And the reality is, women desire and covet good sex as much as men in all the various permutations you could possibly imagine. The difference is, particularly when it's pertaining to infidelity, is women have always paid a higher price than men throughout history. And so they've had to be better at it. They've had to be more discreet because the rules of society force them. So, in essence, women are better cheaters than men because they know have no other option. I mean, I had this conversation not that long ago with somebody in early 80s, which really isn't all that long ago. At least here in Canada, a married woman needed her husband's signature to get a credit card. So we lived in a world that women had very little control over their lives, particularly from a financial perspective. And so if they got caught cheating, they lose their potential income through their husband and they're shamed and society judges them. And so the consequences were far more catastrophic. Whereas a guy does it, oh, shame on him, but I kind of get it. We kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudged it always. And while we're not at equality necessarily yet, we certainly are at a space where women have a lot more control and freedom. And this is why I think a business like ours continues to succeed, because we're answering a need that exists that the other half of the world or the other half of culture is not really willing to delve into. Why do women seek affairs? What are women really looking for? And we can get into that because the answer is not what you usually think it is.
I feel like I'm playing catch up, and it's so funny because it never would have occurred to me that someone would think the business model is not real. Like, I would never for a second question that part of it. And okay, I have to ask you because I feel like you might noodle on this maybe almost as much as I do, because I too exist in a space where I'm often hearing from people who, make these agreements publicly, but then operate by this set of sometimes unspoken, sometimes spoken, various versions of that, these different agreements where it's like, well, but do you think humans design the rules of society that then people like to break because it's fun to be naughty? Because after, like, I'm entering my eighth year of interviewing people, and over again, I'm like, I hear people talking about these shoulds, but then I see their behavior and what they think is hot. So I'm like, are we just making up these nonsense rules about monogamy so that we can all have fun breaking them and feel sneaky? Like, what do you think is at play here?
So there's a lot, and there's no one simple answer to that question. The starting point, though, is to understand monogamy for humans, as it were, wasn't created with the intention, at least, around romantic love. It was an issue of hereditary. The king needed to know that his son was, in fact, his heir to pass that lineage. It was property rights, in essence, that drove monogamy because men wanted to ensure that their offspring were, in fact, their offspring so that they get the land and the title to their bloodline, not some other random guy. And so that was the origin. So romantic and intimate love, monogamy, that came years later. So the rules around it, I think this is just a human condition. When people tell us we can't do something, if we can't rationalize the absolute whys and hows, we're often going to say, well, maybe I should do that. We're designed to break the rules. We're designed to probe and push the envelope. That's why we've evolved in the manner in which we've had. Because every time someone tells us you can't do that, somebody's like, "Well, I can, and I'm going to." And then
Yeah,
we
we get
figure out, was that a really
curious.
good idea, a really bad idea, or somewhere in between? And it's fascinating from my perspective because when it comes to the issue of monogamy or specifically infidelity, it's the only sin mentioned twice in the Ten Commandments. So somebody really didn't want us to do that. And I think being
Which means
told twice maybe
really
more
go
too.
do it. Like, I really
Yeah.
don't want, so I
And
really
and
have to.
and the thing
It's
about it that I find, almost banal, but is that infidelity is the most ubiquitous function of human nature in a sense, because it doesn't matter your culture, your ethnicity, your religion, your economic status, infidelity exists within your world. Go around the world. It doesn't matter. Dating's really different. So, Ashley Madison is kind of really the only true global dating brand out there because all the other ones are really based on Western culture's idea of dating. We still have places where there's marriages, functions of society that operate very, very different from a romantic standpoint. Whereas cheating, infidelity is the exact same no matter where you go around the world. Now, cultures have different expectations around it. One of the countries we don't do well in is France because it's baked into their culture. They know that it happens. They know that monogamy is a bit of a stretch for a lot of people, not everybody. But they have that, as you said at the beginning of our conversation, they have an unspoken set of rules that basically says, you do it, but you do it with respect and you do it
yeah.
with etiquette. You don't expose your partner or your partners. You don't embarrass anybody. There is a famous story about, I believe it was Francois Mitterrand, the president of France, and he had a longtime mistress who he had a daughter with. And at his funeral, there was his mistress, his daughter, and his wife all standing together. Everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
All the journalists knew of this. It wasn't part of his business life, his day-to-day life, so it was never reported upon. And I find that fascinating that, I think that's a very evolved way of looking at it. He wasn't doing anything to embarrass the country, embarrass his family, and he was doing his job. So why was it anybody else's business?
I mean, I love that. And I guess it's so interesting because I'm almost on the opposite end of the spectrum of like, But also if people knew, so what? And I think that's, I have been sharing very openly now for 7 years, and there were some moments where I had some weird feedback loops in the beginning, but I'm also just like, there's something really relieving about just being like, "Yes, this is what I'm doing." Of course, I'm an artist. There are very I don't have repercussions that I hear exist in other people's lives, but I'm also like, "But what if we all came out and we're like, here's what we're doing?" I'm just saying, and we're not there yet, right? The truth is that oftentimes people gravitate toward these secret silos, and it is very funny to me. I'm a global secret keeper for many, both my lovers, my clients, and podcast guests, among others. And it's so funny because, like, I'll keep other people's secrets, but for me, it's juicier to like connect and tell stuff to people, all of it, and this is where I'm learning what is trust building. And I'm also learning, for me, one of the beautiful things about having a secret container, which I think is what maybe Ashley, you can tell me what you think, but I feel like Ashley Madison creates the space for that in the same way that if I'm talking to someone on pod or if someone is meeting me out at a ranch, like there's a secret space that only we share and the rest of our life doesn't have to come into it. And so we get to try out this full version of ourselves with whoever we're with at a moment at a lever. That's what I like, because then to me it feels like open and honest and full. But I don't know if that's even in like the business side of Ashley Madison. Like, do you know that you're fulfilling that fantasy, or how much is that part of the story that you offer to your members?
Well, I think the story is changing. So in the beginning, and as of right now, our tagline has always been "Life is short, have an affair." We predicated our business on the idea that people are having affairs. In fact, our origin story is that our founder in the early 2000s saw that traditional online dating apps were starting to take off. I call them traditional now, but at the time, the eHarmonies, Matches of the world were starting to gain traction. Society was accepting them. But he saw a report that said up to 30% of the people using those sites were pretending to be single, but in fact were married.
Oh.
Proverbial light bulb goes off. Says, why don't I create a place where people can be more honest about their intentions, ironically, so that a married person can meet another married person, both looking for the same expectation of having a discreet, quiet, secretive affair. And so there was an element of that secrecy that drove the origins of our business. And I think a lot of the storytelling, even our own part, might have been a little bit naive because I think it was primarily predicated on a bit of guilt, a bit of shame, and that's why
Mm.
we were being discreet. And over the years, what I've discovered is it's not shame or guilt. It's a desire to undertake certain activities, and there's a big spectrum. We can get into that, whether it's an affair or I'm opening my relationship later in life, or I just want to explore some particular activities with other like-minded individuals. And guess what? I just don't feel a need to share it with the whole world. And traditional dating apps, you are the product. You as a woman have to put all your best looking, beautiful photos up, tell your little story about all things you're into, not into, and reveal yourself out there for everyone to watch. And then you come into work on Monday and Bob in accounting is seeing you and he makes comments. You weren't there to attract Bob. If you wanted Bob, you would have already spoken to him.
Oh, yeah, and I'm like, "Yeah, and for free. Bob's not even giving money for his that's not appreciation."
Exactly. And any woman, I'm sure you've had this conversation yourself even, women, the experience on a lot of these traditional dating apps for women is not exactly great. Between the unsolicited dick pics, the, men who just behave abhorrently, and they're tired of it. And a lot of the traditional dating apps are struggling. And I think a lot of different people are turning to places like us. One of the interesting stats that I found fascinating this year is that for the first time ever, we've had more single people sign up to Ashley Madison this year. 56% of all our new members this year were identified as single.
Are they non-monogamous seeking married partners or sugar babies or something else?
I don't think sugar babies is the
Oh,
biggest thing. I'm sure they exist on every site, but I think it's more and more we're
yes.
getting people who are looking to explore. I don't love some of the terminology, but beyond the vanilla,
Okay.
meaning we have this sense of a traditional relationship that is built on relationship escalators that drive us towards marriage, cohabitation, often kids, white picket fence, nice little house, and that is amazing and beautiful for all the people who seek and desire that. But for a lot of different people, they're looking for different types of connections. Some are shorter term, some are long term, some are looking to get exposed to the kink community. There was a great memoir that came out last year called More by Molly Roden Winter. This was a woman, I believe she was in her early 40s, had a very traditional marriage. She had a good career going, and she wanted to open up her relationship. But because of the nature of life, she was like, it's nobody else's business what I do. I don't know how far I'm going to take this. So I need to do this. I want to do this discreetly. And so she chose Ashley Madison as one of her first forays to explore this journey. And I think that's what a lot of people are starting to realize. The story we've been told about happily ever after is not everyone's story. There's nothing wrong with the story. It's a beautiful story. And for many, many people, it's going to work. And kudos, hand claps for you. But for the rest of the population that wants to explore different spaces, but doesn't want to share that with the rest of the world, that's what Ashley Madison is for, I think.
I read more. We were talking more by Molly Roden Winter, and it was so interesting to read her perspective because I am one of those different people that you mentioned that might be looking for something a little bit unique and different. And also, sidebar, as I'm having this conversation with you, there's a piece of my like early farm girl self that's like, never cheat. That's bad. That's bad. And then there's the version of me that's now a sex worker that's like, oh my gosh, for free? That's so cute and funny. The things people do for fun. And then there's the version of me that off and on still often has a married lover. And I'm like, yeah, we know what that's all about. I know why it's so appealing. And then the version of me that cheated on a partner and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I never thought it'd be like judgment, judgment, judgment. And so those pieces are all coming up for me as I hear this story. And it was reading Molly Roden Winter's book more where I was like, this person's brain works so differently from mine, and I thought that is the most information I've ever had about the site Ashley Madison, and I got the sense that she maybe is not. I don't know. Is she a normal user? Is there a normal user? Like, what are the trends that you notice in people, and how often are you like dialoguing with them about their user experiences?
Well, we talk to our members on a very regular basis. One of the things we do is we survey our members almost weekly about a
Okay.
wide range of subjects because we want to hear from them both in terms of their experience, using our product, what's our community like, what they like, what they don't like, but also what are their thoughts on a range of things. But one of the questions we always ask, if you're interested in telling your story or sharing your story, let us know. And every week, hundreds of women around the world want to tell their story. Part of it is catharsis. Part of it is I remember one woman telling me this, and I thought this was very insightful. She wanted to talk to her younger self. And so, in expressing her experience in her story to us, that's what she was saying is that my belief, just as you said, as the young farm girl, that we have these written rules about how we have a relationship and how we live life. We don't question them because we're told them. Our parents tell them, our religion tells them, our government tells them, and she started to question them. And she wanted to tell her younger self, go explore earlier, question things earlier to find your happiness and find your space. So there is no usual or regular member. I think at the beginning there was. I think very much our business was centered in the world of adultery. I think that has changed dramatically, particularly since 2020, since COVID. I think
Hmm.
people have woken up and said, you know what? There is this opportunity to have different experiences, to expand my view of relationships. And I want to make sure your audience understands this isn't just purely sexual, though it can often
Yeah.
manifest in that way. But what drives women to our site versus what drives men to our site in the traditional sense is fascinating to me because, and you probably have a better insight to this, so tell me what you think about this. We actually had an academic come to us a couple of years ago from the University of Missouri, and she was specifically looking into why do women cheat? Why are women stepping out of their monogamous relationships? And it's a very hard issue to study because people lie. People lie
Yes.
to themselves. So if you go do an anonymous public
Yes.
survey, you're not going to out yourself as
Well,
an
and
adulterer.
it's like it's only in the longer conversations that their unconscious reveals itself because two things can be true and often
Yes.
are. And so it's only in like untangling that and 1 or 2 hours is not enough. But yeah, yeah, a public survey I
No, no,
imagine is
that's a great segue because I think the rationale, the reasoning for why women were signing up does have the two truth idea behind it because 80% of the women in this study were in sexless or orgasmless marriages. But yet they love their husbands, they love their families, and they weren't willing to blow up the 80% to get the 20%. But what they were saying is a lifetime of, you know, unsatisfactory sex wasn't really compelling to them. There was no option in their mind. And so they chose a third route. They chose Ashley Madison to get what was missing. And to the listener who says, well, why didn't they just talk to the husband? They do.
they do. Yeah.
Often they do have these direct conversations. Often they do go to therapy. And some men can't, some men won't. And I can get into that from my personal perspective. But the fact that 80% were in sexless or orgasm marriages tells me so much about what befalls so many relationships. And it's funny in the not funny way. It really isn't about sexual prowess or sexual ability. It's about understanding your body, and it's about listening to your partner, and it's about being vulnerable. And I'll tell you why that all lines up. Particularly in America, sex education is abysmal. Sex education for women is basically non-existent. You get some variation of, don't worry, pull your, he'll pull your nutty down when he's done, and
Yeah.
just smile and grin,
Also,
kind
you're
of a
gonna
deal. And I
bleed. Look out.
Yeah, people think I'm being like, facetious when I say this, and I'm like,
No.
quite honestly, a lot of women, that's about as much as they get from their parents from a sex education perspective. Yes, yes, they get the condoms thing, and they no pregnancy, no STDs, not that they listen,
Sometimes.
and
Yeah, hopefully.
sometimes, and then in this day and age, because I'm a parent of teenage boys, consent is now part of that conversation. Fantastic, but we never tell our kids, particularly our daughters, what good sex is. And so for a lot of women, they don't discover how their body really works, probably to their mid 30s, early 40s, some earlier, some later. And then if you suddenly go to your partner after being together for 10, 12, 15 years and say, hey, Paul, the thing you've always done, well, it's not that it's bad, it's not working for me. And I need to have a conversation about that. Unfortunately for men, they get wounded. All they hear is, I'm not good. And they shut down, they shrink, because they feel less of a man. And so neither party is getting what they want. And then these women come to Ashley Madison, which interestingly leads us to why do men cheat? Because we have this idea that everyone's this Don Draper, high libido, wants the young intern in the office, has this high sex appeal. That's nothing to do with why men cheat. Again, same study, Dr. Alicia Walker, men are cheating for emotional validation. They don't feel wanted anymore. They don't feel desired. And so it's the flip of what everyone says it is. But I think it boils down to that we don't understand our own innate desires, needs, and wants. And most importantly, we don't know how to communicate it and listen to our partners communicate to us. That leads to a lot of mismatches in unfortunate situations where people do end up on our site. But I think that was the main reason. And I think over time, though, I think that is lessening. I think it's more people being willing to explore, people looking to expand their boundaries and dip their toes into spaces that they've heard about, they've read about, they've seen, but they're like, maybe that is more for me. And the fact is we've had more than 91 million members join since we launched, and I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon.
Wow. I think the other thing that you said that feels really relevant is okay, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, and I can't remember what you said that made me think of this concept, so correct me if I'm wrong, but a piece about closeness and trust, and the interesting thing that I have observed in experiences trying to date, going from that casual to, like, now we're something more moment, and then also in interviewing people, it's almost like this thing happens where we're a certain amount of bonded in our life together. And now it becomes dangerous for me to explore to possibly upset that bond. So I'm going to keep a secret rather than share this weird thing that's bubbling up inside of me that I'm not sure about. And that's the reason that I prefer to stay single because I'm like, I don't want the closest person in my life to feel so close to me that they must keep secrets from me. Like, that's my greatest
Right.
fear. That's my greatest fear. And that's what I hear
Fair enough.
over and over again from clients who love their partner and they're coming to see me because they don't, they don't wanna upset their life or their marriage or anything, and they need to feel something. They need to feel intimacy, they need to feel closeness, and like, and then there's the I think also the gendered study, which I feel like a lot of these gendered things really apply to both people of all parts, but I know that they say that in general, many men feel emotional closeness after the physical, and many women need emotional closeness to want to get to the physical. And so I see that kind of also driving these loops. It also sounds like many of your members are heteronormative, like it's a pretty straight paradigm that we're
I
kind of
think those
discussing.
numbers are slightly changed, but traditionally, yeah, I'd say like
Okay.
90% would be heteronormative. And it's interesting. We've always had same sex as an option.
Mm.
I think yay Canada, we've had same sex marriage here for as almost as long as I can remember. But what's interesting, I have seen a bit of an increase over the years. But typically, what I have found is it's more couples doing the unicorn hunting than it is anything else on our side. Because quite frankly, same sex pairings for men Grinder has a bit of a market on that place, and
Yeah,
so they do very, very, very good business. People aren't going to necessarily come to our site, though they could. But I find, a lot of the female to female accounts on our site are actually couples doing a little unicorn hunting, which is I do find interesting that more couples are exploring that space.
totally, totally. I mean, it's very fun, and again, in a space where it can be somewhat boundaried, right? Everyone needs different amounts of connection before they get together. Some couples really like to have long dates, some singles are just like, "Let's go." But it's great to have clear containers so that it's not like, "Oh my god, are we gonna be a throuple forever now if we get along with this person?" Because I definitely know that
Right.
that's the concern of a lot of people. Wow, what about the parts of you that come up? Like, what was it like saying yes to this job? Or I never
Mhm.
really asked you any of the interview questions in order because 'cause I'm so interested, but, like, I would love to hear a
That's
little
okay.
bit more. Yeah, like, what's your relationship to, like, how long have you been in this job? What is it like, do you have your own judgments that you have to overcome in this space, and, like, what's that like?
So I've been with the company since 2013, and I came to Ashley Madison via a former colleague. She rang me up one day and said, "Oh, I know this company. They're looking for someone senior to run their communications." And at the time, I had spent the first half of my career as a communication consultant. So I worked for like agencies, and I had a lot of clients. And so, I live somewhat of the Don Draper lifestyle in that sense. Not that I'm comparing myself to him. And I was a bit fatigued from that. I wanted something I could sort of own and dive into and like really be part of. But it was interesting. Here I am, a married father of two young boys at the time, and I'm coming home to tell my wife at the time, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna go join Ashley Madison. What do you think about that?" So that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But the good thing from my perspective was my she's now my ex-wife, but my ex-wife at the time, she and I met in the industry together. We actually worked together. So she really understood the reasons and rationales around it. Here was this really cool Canadian company doing business around the world, delving into things that was, a somewhat taboo, obviously. But I'll tell you the one thing that I liked the most and continue to like the most. In my past, I would have clients where I had to not lie. Let's be very clear. I never lied for a client, but I would push agendas and narratives that didn't necessarily line up directly with my viewpoint on things.
Mhm.
For sake of argument, brown fuzzy drinks that are full of sugar, trying to tell people that they're part of a natural, healthy, balanced diet.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
here, again, our tagline is life is short, have an affair. I'm not out there telling you that affairs are good, bad, or ugly. I'm telling you they're happening, why they're happening, and what's happening behind them. And we're not pretending to be anything other than what we are. So in doing that, there's this odd honesty to our business that I really love. And I like the fact that we target taboos, we stand for the members behind us, and we're going to tell truths even if they're a bit uncomfortable. That women want sex, that women want good sex, and women are exploring the spaces. But what they're tired of is the judgment of the men who want to do the same things, but the next day chastise the women for wanting to do the same thing they did. That still exists, and it's such an odd dynamic. So I love the fact that we can confront these taboos, confront these silly narratives, and push some truths out there and make people uncomfortable. And that probably speaks a little bit to my personality. But all those things combined, plus the little perk of I get to travel the world, so good. I love all these parts of it. So yeah, I've been through all the ups and downs, going on 13 years. It's an amazing ride.
Wow. I'm like, I wanna travel the world more. That's so interesting, and I'm also, as I listen to you, I'm like, you like making people uncomfortable. I have accidentally made people uncomfortable my entire life, and part of my obsession with, like, attempting to learn how people understand sex and relationship and communication is my own efforts to not make people uncomfortable, and I'm like, but if I was like you and I just liked it, then I'd be so successful. Can you tell me what it's like, what's the part that you enjoy about it? Or like what's fun about it?
Yeah, so to be clear, this is not something I do to everybody in my life because I hope I don't.
No, no, I mean
Um,
there's a playful nuance here, right? Like there's a
what I like to do is, and it's funny, I did an interview last year on a very well-known television program in Toronto. And the two hosts, there was these two women, and they're well-known, and they're amazing at what they do. They could not have been more hostile toward me if they tried. At no point was I mad with them because I understood their perspective. I know why you're mad at me. You're supposed to be mad at me. You're told to be mad at me, but I'm going to make you uncomfortable because I'm not going to lash out. I'm not going to get enraged at your madness towards me because that's the expected. That's the typical reaction because they literally pulled the how do you sleep at night? And usually I like to say on my left side, but that's a little glib. But the point was if you are going to be anti-adultery or even anti Ashley Madison, as it were, I'm going to challenge you to understand what you're really fighting for. Are you fighting because you were told this is what you're supposed to do, or do you understand the issue? Because if you don't know what's going on in the world of infidelity, if you've never studied, if you've never spoken to people in depth, and you're just making a moral judgment, your argument's going to probably fall flat because it's not based on reality. So that's the part I enjoy. It's not punishing somebody, it's showing them that you've not done the homework. You've not delved into this. You're simply moralizing your belief system on somebody else's. And there's no value in that to me. If yours is better, argue why it's better, not just because it's righteous. I had a great mentor many, many years ago who told me the price of criticism is a better idea. And so that's what I try to take into those conversations. So you say monogamy is the only way. I say why?
Yeah.
Defend it.
Well, and I'm also like, okay, I hear your opinion, and based on probably the knowledge that we both have in our heads, we can look around and see how well it's actually working for most people. And am I a proponent of a monogamous relationship or a good relationship that's fulfilling and allowing both people to grow? And that looks different for many people. And because of the structures that we have in society, not everyone is so open minded as me, right? To be like, yes, a husband and a wife and some girl and boy friends, whatever makes you happy, like bring them to the for Thanksgiving. I know many people live with constraints where they do need to hide these things, but they need to pretend they have to really be hidden, and that won't make sense to me. What are some of the other things that people get mad about? Not to be like amygdala trigger moment, but I'm just sort of like, oh man, should I have been more mad at him, or but I
I
but I
think
see
well,
all these parts of myself.
yeah, I think there's basically two streams of people being upset at our business in general. One, just the pure nature of infidelity, the fact that we go out there so boldly to proclaim that life is short, have an affair, and we give a place for people to be discreet and explore these spaces. So the boldness of which that we do this, we're not pretending to be something, we're not being coy or wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's something that it isn't. So the fact that we've been so out front, despite what we've been through, and I think that is easier to deal with because I understand where that comes from, and I can argue that all day long. The more difficult one, though I can argue it, is the belief that there's no women on the site, that we're a fraudulent business. They attack us from a different angle, and that comes from some mistakes we've made in the past. But I think it's primarily predicated, again, as I talked about earlier, about this misogynistic theme throughout Western culture that says good women don't do these types of things. Women in general aren't looking for these types of activities, other than the girl with the daddy issues or some bullshit story that makes you feel better about chastising these people because they've chosen a life that doesn't meet your requirements. And that one is a little tougher, not because we don't have all the evidence to push back on the criticisms. It's just simple fact they're not going to believe it. People are convinced of their righteousness, that our business is immoral and is evil and we're doing nothing good, and anybody who's using the site is also deviant and not a functioning part of society. But then when you talk to my members and you hear the stories, then you start to get into, oh, wait a minute, that's an affair, but that's not the kind of affair I thought was happening. Now I'm struggling to say if that's good or bad. And I'll give you an example if you don't mind.
An example with a story, I would love it.
So this is what we call the compassionate affair. We had a member. She was in her early 50s, I believe, a very successful lawyer. She was, actively involved in her community. She had a good reputation, a strong standing. She had married a man who was a couple years older than her, and unfortunately had fallen into early onset Alzheimer's. He was a dementia patient, and her role obviously changed dramatically to primarily being his caregiver. Now she loved this man, and she had zero intention of divorcing and or leaving him, but she was in a position where her needs were no longer going to be met. And she couldn't date traditionally because she was married. She was not going to get a divorce. She was not leaving this man, despite him having zero capacity to fulfill her needs, not just sexually, across the whole spectrum. And so she chose Ashley Madison, and she found a lover who was in a somewhat similar situation. And this intimate connection allowed her to relieve so much of her stress, to be a human being again, to have that connection with something that she had lost. And she came back to me and said, it enabled me to be the wife my husband needs me to be now. So yeah, she was having an affair. Yes, she was sleeping with someone who wasn't her husband. But I think that's a beautiful story. It's sad and tragic, but beautiful in and of itself because we gave something to somebody that couldn't get it any other way. And some people would say, "Oh, that's horrible that she steps out." I'm like, "Who are you to judge? He will never know." And he is now better off because her stress load is down. So that one is
Oh,
heartwarming. And I'll tell you another one. I can tell you this woman's name because she's very public about her story. Her name is Bobby Goldman, and I think, honest to goodness, she might be my most favorite story of all time. So Bobby was married to a Hollywood producer. She had a beautiful life. She had a number of her own businesses, so she was financially well off. Sadly, I think in her early 60s, her husband passed away. After a couple of years, her therapist said, "Listen, Bobby, it's not that you're just depressed. You're horny. You need to get laid. You need to get some sex." She's like, "Hey, you're right." So she signs up to a bunch of traditional dating sites, and turns out most of them in her age just want someone to make them a sandwich and fold their clothes. And she's like, "That's not the game." And so she signed up to Ashley Madison. And over the course of her time there, she ends up dating 7 different married men. And at times, she meets some of the wives of these men who say, "You know what? Thank God you're doing this because that part of my life is over. But I didn't want to deny him that.
yes.
And so you're beautiful and you're loving and it's amazing and it's making our world better." So, no, they're not a throuple. It's a fair. But this is the best part. Her story is so amazing. She writes it into an off Broadway play called The Curvy Widow, which is what her username was. And I think that's amazing because, again, shows a very different perspective of female sexuality at later stages in life, which makes people uncomfortable, which makes me happy. And the reason I love that is there's an aspect of my family that I assign to that story. And my poor father, I hope he never hears this, but I've told this story a couple of times. I remember when we had to put my great grandmother in an old age home. She was in her late 90s. My dad was the main contact of the home, and I remember he got a phone call within a month, and they're like, Mr. Keable, you're gonna have to come get your grandmother because she can't stay here any longer." And my dad's like, "Oh God, what's wrong? Is she sick? Is she ill? Is she fallen?" They're like, "Oh no, she's getting naked and climbing in bed with some of the other residents."
What? They
And my
kicked her
dad's like,
out for that?
"Yeah." And my dad's like, "Well, are they complaining?" "Well, no, but we can't have it." My dad's like, "Yeah, you can. Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Goodbye." Like
Yeah.
like, she
Oh,
was
good.
95, 96. No, they weren't having sex, but isn't that beautiful that even at the
Yeah.
last years of her life, she still reached for that human connection, that touch, that
Yeah.
intimacy, and I think, "Oh my god, that's exactly what I wanna be like," within reason, and I think it's beautiful, and people cringe at it and think it's ridiculous, but I think it was beautiful, and I think my great-grandmother was a wonderful human being, and the fact that she still desired that made her even more human to me and even a better person.
Absolutely, and to think that people who are wise in their years don't want cuddles anymore is crazy to me. Like, that's nonsense. Of course, like, we all need oxytocin dumps no matter how old we are. And, like, I mean, I love these stories, and I certainly know that people get connection needs met in all kinds of ways. It's rarely from one single person, even if someone does have a one true love. And so I love creating spaces where we're allowed to be our actual truth selves. And as I heard you speak, I can't help but also think about how the words that are normalized here, like adultery, infidelity, like those are some like gnarly words where like most people are actually pretty open minded, or the ones that are shouting, they love to have something to fight about no matter what. And they're usually the ones that have like a
The most
secret
secrecy.
a secret something something weird in their closet. The
Yeah,
most weird
I think it often is the case that the people that criticize us the most often are the ones guilty of having that desire. Whether they're doing something on that, acting
Yeah,
on that desire or not is different.
it's like
But I think a lot of them
repression.
have the desire, and I think the anger that comes at us to a degree is because, well, if I'm not can't get to do those fun things, why do you get to do those fun things? And it's,
Yeah.
you know what? You can do those fun
I know
things.
that I'm like, "No, that's the point, you're invited, it's fun, come on, you
Yeah,
need a
just lower your
cuddle.
guard, be
They probably
vulnerable.
need cuddles." Yeah.
Everybody needs cuddle. Everybody
Yeah.
needs that skin to skin contact. And it's funny, and I didn't hear this because I did listen to some of your previous pods, but as a sex worker, there's this old story that sex workers would talk about how some men just hire them because they just need someone to talk to. And people always quaffed at that and said, "Oh, that's just silliness." It's not that at all. But there's an absolute truth to that because men want to be heard. They want to be felt. They want to be connected. They want to be desired. And that comes through not just sex. And if a man feels that, he's going to feel so much more comfortable and trusted and vulnerable. And women, I put it to this way, sometimes I think that as well as being the world's largest married dating service, we're kind of the world's largest marriage counseling service because if you don't want your partner on my site, listen to what's going on, right? And
Yeah.
here's the thing, you sort of alluded to this earlier in the conversation about avoiding potential relationships because then you might be so close to someone they're afraid to tell you
Happens.
something they want, they
I
desire.
hear that so often in other people's stories. It's the monster under my bed. I'm like, that's like the thing that
Well,
I'm
think about
having
it
to
this
deal with because
way.
it's scary. Yeah.
If I was still married and I'm with this beautiful woman for 30 years, but suddenly I get an interest in a different space
Yeah.
and I want to talk to her about that. And it's not the fear of rejection, it's not the fear of your partner saying no to the idea, it's the fear of being judged on it. If your best
Mm.
friend, your lover, your most intimate partner over 20, 30, 10, whatever many years you guys have been together says, Paul, not only am I not going to do that, you're a freak for wanting that. That judgment is terrifying. Whereas if I go to a complete random stranger and say, "Hey, Luna, I'm into some of this weird stuff. What do you think?" And you're like, absolutely not." Your denial of that doesn't impact me in the same way. And
Right.
so that is that fear. It's not the fear of the no. It's not the being turned down because they always say the worst they can say is no. No, no, the worst is far
No.
worse than that. It's I can
Yeah.
get judged.
Yeah.
I can be told I'm less of a human for the things that I'm interested in. And that's a terrifying proposition. And so my counsel, my advice to people is create the space where your partner can be vulnerable enough to express these interests and desires and don't feel that you have to accommodate necessarily, but don't judge them for it.
Yeah.
Don't harsh, one of the favorite things I've learned over the past few years of my dating experiences, don't yuck somebody else's yum.
Yeah.
It's such a good concept. You can say, hey, let me think about it. Let's see if there's a compromise. Let's see if there's a way around because that thing is not going to be me. Or maybe there's something else we can do that tickles that fancy, but don't make them feel bad for having a desire because that's just so cruel and dehumanizing, in my opinion.
And disconnected because if I am simply in the cases in my life where I've just shut something down, whatever category it's in, there's a part of me that is defending and totally uncurious. And to receive that from the person who I want to know me most in the world, the fantasy I have of a projected partner and my own fears here, to think that someone wouldn't even be curious about my fantasy and that they would just shut it out is incredibly painful to imagine.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that said, I am a person that, like, because of my life and my wide curiosity and my openness and my desire to share everything, especially as it comes into my head with the people that I love and care about, I've gotten so much, pushback and yuck on my yum sometimes that, like, it is really painful. I have a wide desire and, I'm learning to meet my own needs for my own self because that's the place that I can, connect from most the best. But it makes a total amount of sense why people would stay quiet, but I'm also just like, the people who listen to this podcast and then talk to each other more, I mean, it's great. You mentioned that and you told us a couple stories, and you mentioned that you receive stories. This audience loves stories. I don't hear from them as much as you hear from them, but so I'm still trying to figure out their details. But like, is there a place where people can go read more stories or hear more stories, or do those people want to come share stories? I love those firsthand stories.
Well, I think most of our stories, if you're a member, we're constantly sending out, we have a newsletter we send to our members, and we often include snippets from members' experiences because I think it sheds a light. One of the things, and this is very personal opinion from my perspective, is from my thought on why people join and how they come to choose Ashley Madison, is I think for a lot of women it's somewhat tribal. They hear other women's stories. So what we do is often our members will do podcasts like this, obviously with the veneer of anonymity, which I love that you offer that, by the way.
Yeah.
Or they'll talk to a different type of a journalist to tell their story because, as I said earlier, they want to talk to their younger self. Sometimes it's a bit of catharsis because they can't tell anybody else what they're doing. And so those stories are out
Yeah.
there in other pods and other media outlets. And if you join our site, you're going to hear some of the stories because women want to hear not necessarily their exact story, but they want to see themselves within the story. They want to see an aspect that says, "Oh, I, she thought the same way or somewhat similar, and she's getting what she wants. Well, maybe I can get what I want."
Yes,
And I think
yes,
that
yes.
drives so much of female participation in these spaces, not just Ashley Madison, across
Totally.
the full spectrum.
Yes,
Because
that and
women
it
want to feel safe.
they wanna feel safe, they wanna feel alive, desired. All of us want to feel desired by our lovers and engaged. And for me personally, I think, regardless of where it is or what it's attached to, sharing these stories with each other, like the ripples of inspiration that I get, or even if I'm completely different from someone, but it sparks something of like, "Oh, my version wouldn't be like that, but maybe it would be like this," you know? And so that's why I love hearing all sorts of things. Okay, I'm gonna ask you the question that I normally ask at the very beginning, and I feel like we probably can have a good guess now, but if you had to rate yourself, maybe as it relates to your work or however it comes up, where you can tell us multiple answers, on a sexual shame-o-meter, with 10 being the most full of sexual shame and 0 being like, "I do not have any," where do you fall and when, if ever, does it squiggle?
I'd say I have zero shame.
Yeah.
The squiggle part is I have no shame. I'm very comfortable in everything that I've done and the world that I inhabit. The squiggle, the squirm comes from I always want to protect my kids,
Yeah.
not because I've done anything bad, but they live in a world where people see me doing these types of conversations, and whether their friends or potential partners see their dad doing these kind of conversations. So I never want to be a source of embarrassment for them or a reason
Mhm.
something doesn't work out in their life. So I'm very cautious about what I share and with whom I share, not out of any sense of guilt or shame, because I have none, but more out of a sense of protection for the world that they're going to choose because what they do in life is theirs and not mine. I have one kid who's away at university. He's rapidly becoming an adult. It's terrifying. And one
Yeah.
just on the cusp. And I love this job. I've never hidden the fact where I work, so they know about it. I was a little league baseball coach for 7 years. Every
Yeah.
parent on the team knew I had this job. I'm not sure they all loved it, but that's okay. I didn't
Yeah.
talk to kids about what I do for a living.
Right, yeah. You're not like
But I'm also not, naive that kids eventually are gonna start looking up Coach Paul and, holy moly, he's out here talking about some really different stuff. And so
Mhm.
I think that's where my squirm comes in. It's interesting. My dad, who I see very regularly, he lives in the city as well. He's fully aware, and he gets such a giggle whenever he sees like a news clip of me talking about stuff. My mother, we lost her 20 plus years ago. I'm
Mm.
not sure. I think she would probably give me the most grief over this job than anybody else. Not out of moral issues, because she wasn't a particularly religious person, but I think she would grill me harder than anybody to make sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's totally fair. And I mean, it makes me think of what you were saying earlier too about the ways in which we can be open or like where we do need to use an alias and privacy versus public spaces. Um
Yeah.
how do you think about that? Like, I'm in a space where I'm sharing openly constantly, and I want everyone to do the same. And I'm heavily aware that that's not where everyone is. But I'm like, the more that we all share openly, the faster we'll get there. And then, of course, I always want to make sure that anonymous people can come on and share their full stories if that's the only way they can share. How do you think about that? Just like maybe for work, but also maybe for personal, like just in the world.
No, it's across the board because it's just, on the personal side, as I mentioned, I have an ex-wife, which means I'm a person who dates now.
Mm,
And what I realized very quickly is that I need to disclose where I work very quickly in the conversation
mm,
because as you said at the
same.
beginning, I'm 51. Thanks for aging me.
Oh.
I'm at a certain age, and I'm dating people
51
of a
is a
certain age.
great age. Are you kidding me? 51 is
No,
a
it's not a complaint.
especially on a Oh, no, you're doing great. When you got on, I was like, "51, good job."
You're far too kind. A lot of the women I date, the majority of them are divorced, and percentage of them have infidelity as the core of their separation or the
Oh.
rationale at least. And sometimes there has been cases where someone's used Ashley Madison. In fact, that led to said divorce. And so I would never want to surprise somebody in a first date. So from that perspective, I have to be very open and disclose very quickly, get that out front, right?
Yeah.
So there's that aspect. And again, I have no shame because the reality is I can't really hide it. I'm not an accountant working in the back room of an office. I'm out here doing these conversations. And I have, a particularly unique name or surname, so I can't pretend it's somebody who it's not. So from that perspective, but I've always been that way. I've always been very open about who I am and what I do. I don't have shame, and I think that comes a lot from my family. We're a very loud, out front, not in your face kind of family. I laugh. Did you ever see that TV show, The Bear?
No, but my
Oh,
sister
such a
watched it,
great
yeah.
show. There's a great scene
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Christmas where this huge family fight. I'm like, "Oh my god, that's my family, and we love each other, and I'm actually going to see them all today." And I think that infused a sense of not arrogance or narcissism, but I don't need to be ashamed of who I am or what I've done in my life. But here's the thing that is shifting, because this is the work part. And I think society writ large is undergoing a bit of transformation right now. We have lived the past 20 years through the social media era where we have put every aspect of our life online and we've lived this beautiful life and we view others' beautiful lives. And I think there's a fatigue that is setting in. And it's setting in across the board. As I mentioned earlier, for women on the dating world, there's this aspect of having to reveal all to the world to attract one potential partner or multiple, whatever you're looking for,
Mhm.
but giving access to a lot of other people that you have no intention for. And so it's not a sense of shame or guilt or a negative. It's more, hey, you should feel lucky that I let you see that. And
Mhm.
so there's this turn towards discretion, not an act of protection, but out of what I have is valuable. And if you're lucky enough to get invited in, good for you. But if you're not, you'll just have to, remain on the outside because this wasn't meant for you ever.
Mm.
And I think it's not an easy transition, but I think we're moving closer to that space. And again, particularly from women, because how many women do you know that use dating apps, but they go incognito and they only match with men that they select? But they're turning the system on its head and it's leading to a lot of dating apps losing business because they're selling one thing. Oh, these beautiful profiles, man. Come on, there's no women on there.
Yeah.
Well, they are, they're just hidden. And men feeling that they're not adequate and or having false expectations. Because again, I'm 51. I'm never going to date someone in their 20s. Like, good for you, Bill Belichick. You're 70 dating a 25-year-old. Zero judgment. That's not who I am. But the reality is a lot of women have to like swat away guys and they'll open up their app and there's 500 likes to find that one that is a good match is a pain in the ass. It's a frustrating and fatiguing experience. And so apps like Ashley Madison, where you're not going to see a lot of face pictures as profile pictures, actually. You get a good write up. And so you have to read, but you make a better connection. And I think more and more, whether it's our app or others like ours, that discretion's at its core, though I think ours is core the best. I think that's the new world because I think women want better connections, whether it's vanilla or not. Sometimes it's pure traditional dating, but again, they just don't want everybody up in their business. And I think that shift is going to be dramatic. And I don't think a lot of the businesses are prepared for it yet.
I'm here for that. I definitely hear lots of screen related fatigue reports from people. And, there certainly is a craving for satisfying in person private experiences where people can relax, and
Right.
that's something
Let your
everyone
guard
craves.
down.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I think that also has driven our success over the years. That because traditionally, again, you go to whether it's Bumble or Hinge, and zero criticism at all, but you often are putting the pictures of your best self. Who is the best Luna? This is me on my best moments. And yes, that is you, and you look beautiful and gorgeous. But do you look like that every moment of every day? Of course you don't. And nor would I. And I would never put up a picture with a fish. But sorry,
Wait,
I
wait,
know
what
that
do
trend
you
exists.
wait, I have
We'll
knowledge
we'll
that I
get to
think
that in a second.
okay, because I
We'll
wanna
get to that.
know
I'm not gonna
okay,
avoid that.
okay, okay.
But when you come to Ashley Madison, often you're looking for a very specific thing that you're missing, and people are very explicit. So they're not looking for their ultimate, lifetime partner, more likely than not. They're looking for someone to fulfill this specific need.
Yes.
And in doing so, it's not that they're compromising. They've lived a life. They realize, listen, we'd all want to date Chris Hemsworth and have that six pack guy, or Salma Hayek, or whatever your version of perfection is. but realistically, they don't exist. Okay, what do I want? Who fulfills that need? And I'm going to go after that thing more than all the other things because I have the 80% at home. I'm missing the 20%.
Mm.
And in doing so, our members tend to be more honest, more direct, and open to a lot of different circumstances because, again, they're looking for the 20%, not the 80%. And I think that makes some really interesting connections and some fascinating stories.
I love it, and I really am realizing that one of the core threads of everything that I do, whether I am photographing someone or working with them on a personal touch level or having a conversation with them that's recorded or not, like I love getting to the core of who they are in this particular moment and getting to be like, that's so cool. It's like that over there. It's like this over here. Do you want to feel this thing on me? Like, and that's where we get to do the fun parts where we actually get to be ourselves and feel that fulfillment. And I love that you guys create a space for that. And I'm also just like, wow, and they're just doing it for fun and for free because, like, when you talk about dating apps, it's been so long since I've been on a dating app because of the unsafety, the overwhelm, and also humans weren't built for it, right? Like, humans were not built to filter that level the way that our dopamine system is built. You tell me that I like this person, but then I have to meet them, and the effort happens after the fact, and it's lopsided, like, so my filter right now is money. Like I'm like, how much do you want to be in my personal sphere in that way? And I'm figuring out what the rest of it looks like. But you hit upon something that I'm very curious about, and I just have to know, what do you know about fish? Like men holding fish in dating photos is what we're talking about specifically, right?
Yes,
Okay,
it's a
and you would
huge
not put
thing.
one. Yes, but I've only talked about this with other girlfriends who were like, "Do you notice this trend?" And then one of them asked me about it and she
It's
shared her
huge.
theories. Yes, and so like and every time I see one I think it's cute and it's loaded and I want to know what you know about it.
It's our belief system that men are supposed to be providers. I can provide. Look what I can do with my
That is
hands. I am a man who has manly, capabilities, and I went out into the world and got food. I think it's one of the most basic
okay, it is.
instincts to show to women, I can provide for you. I can do things that don't require, whether it's money or other elements outside my control. Me as a man, I can go and bring food to the table. And I think there's just an element of that men still believe that the most manly thing I can do is be a provider in a relationship in this dynamic. I can show you my strength in show off that look what I did. And I
Yeah.
think basically that's all it is. And it's also to a certain degree, it goes back to my earlier comment about men wanting validation. You liking that, you saying, "Hey, Paul, great that you caught that fish." You're validating my experience. You're telling me the thing I did that I think is cool and manly. You also think that, so it aligns us from that perspective.
Interesting. Okay, because we may be overcomplicated, but tell me what you think about this extra layer because we were like, well, in our society, women are more likely to be objectified, right? We are taught, we women, pointing to myself, taught from a young age was I to, look a certain way or have a certain appearance and to be photographed often, and then to present and to photograph and especially in the last 20 years of social media to like show people where I am and what I'm doing. And we were like, what if guys just don't have enough excuses to take pictures of themselves. And so then once they catch a fish, what if that's one of the few pictures? We're like, do guys who fish only mostly have pictures of themselves when they catch a fish? I mean, and it is exciting. Like I don't fish, but like if I did, I would probably take a picture with a fish if I caught it. I mean, I don't like slimy things. I am growing, but okay, so you think it's
We
that
can work
big?
on that.
Yeah, we can work on that. But what do you think about that other element of like when and do you can you see fish pictures? Are they on Ashley Madison and do you coach people around them?
I don't think I've ever seen a fish picture on Ashman. Not to say it's
Okay.
not there. I don't look at a lot of photos anymore, but I think
Okay.
that's probably. I don't think it's in abundance. I
Okay.
think you did hit on something that is very salient, in terms of men not having opportunities where they feel comfortable
Yes. To be
taking
like, look
a
at
picture.
me. Yeah.
The selfie phenomena feels to a lot of men very feminine. So whereas taking a picture of my fish and me doesn't. And I think it speaks to the other part where you said, we are in a world where women are expected to be given aesthetic based compliments within a relationship. "Oh, Luna, your hair looks really lovely today. Oh, I like the way that dress looks on you," yada, yada, yada. Men do not get these traditionally. And I think going back to the reason why men, seek to expand monogamy, that validation part, they're not getting that. They want that. They want to be told, "Hey, Paul, those jeans look nice on you. You got a cute butt.
Yeah.
I like that sweater. Oh, you got a haircut today."
Yeah.
Men don't get those compliments. And
Yeah.
because society hasn't engineered us that way for women to give them and for men to receive them. But I
Yes.
think whether they recognize it, I would argue that it's mostly at a subconscious level, men desire that. They do want to be wanted. They do want to be told they look pretty or
Yes.
handsome or
Okay,
nice
but
or something.
they do, but then when I tell them that I have so many lovers where I'm like, "Ooh," like I'm flirting with them in my ways, and I only give real compliments. I will always be able to find something true and real to compliment, and I will not be getting intimate with a person if that's not possible for me, right? Like, I need to have that amount of connection, and I notice so often when I'm like, "Ooh, your buns. Ooh, you're this, you're that," whatever it is dismissed. And so I'm like, do they need a class on how to receive a compliment or how to let it be okay?
Yes.
Because I
Yes, of
know it's
course
not
you
coming from
do.
a place of they don't want my compliment. I can see very clearly that it's them being uncomfortable and not knowing how to take it or receive it or whatever. And so I'll sometimes coach them, but it depends on what we're doing. But like, and I just my heart goes out to them. I'm like, come on, let me just love you.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is this version of toxic male masculinity, not to get all psychobabbly, but there is a part where we're told to be, stoic and manly and suppress our emotions, and we're fighting against our own intuitiveness. And so when I talked about why women look for cheating and why men look for cheating, it's not that men or women are different. They're getting the different things. So women are getting those emotional validating things. They're not getting good sex. So that's what they seek. Men are getting the sex, but they're not getting the validating. So that's what they seek. And we don't train our boys to receive and or give these kind of typical compliments. I mean, I have a golf group that we go away every year to a golf weekend for the boys, and companionship and intimacy is shown through, surprise, surprise, derogatory comments to one another. That's
Interesting.
how men bond and socialize with each other. The way we put each other down is how we, convey to the other, hey, I appreciate you and I acknowledge you by putting you down. And
Interesting.
it's counterintuitive
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, but that's how men bond.
Or they just like do an activity and don't talk very much. But this
Oh, yeah,
like
that's
when
one of our favorite things to do.
yeah, they love to do but it's so funny because I now at this point have several, pillow boyfriends who will lay there and for hours, like you said, they love to talk. And I love talking. I'll talk forever, and I love learning about other people's world through listening to them talk. Like no one's ever man or woman explained to me because I'm too busy asking questions. But like, they I don't understand why so many of them are laying there being like, "Yeah, guys don't talk to each other." I'm like, "You guys clearly would have so much to talk about if you wanted to, but, we gotta re-socialize them all. I don't know. Or maybe we don't. Maybe it's fine the way that it is,
I'm
and,
working on 2.
you
I
know?
got 2 boys. I'm working hard on that because to
Yes.
me, the best thing I can do is show them an example of a man who can express feelings and show desire
Yes.
and live a life, and also give them the guidance. My oldest boy was recently in a relationship, so we talked about that, what that means, how like, what to do, what not to do. We had a lot of really important conversations outside of the, typical birds and bees conversation.
Love that.
Because one of the things I would be, disappointed is that any of my kids ever use my job as a rationale to be a bad person, to act,
Right.
untruthfully, and not, learn from what I can give them and be a good person to whatever partner they've chosen in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because people especially since, of course, I see people who are married, and sometimes people like to get mad at me about that, but I'm like, in my perfect world, everyone who makes an agreement does their best to keep that agreement or explicitly update it. If I was the boss of the universe, that would be the law that everyone would have to follow or they'd spontaneously combust.
Sure.
I'm not in charge of the universe. And so the best I can hope is that people are making agreements that work for both of them. And if they're not working, then they figure out a way that works for both of them to make it work. And I think that's where a lot of the in between stuff happens, and people are actually very reasonable if they both feel loved and like needs are met. And then I'm also like, sometimes we need seismic shifts to realize that our needs are not getting met. And I'm kind of a believer of like we're all each other's growth partners if we're showing up in each other's lives, right?
We work with this marital therapist, sex therapist, Dr. Tammy Nelson. She's a wonderful woman. And she talks about this idea of the can opener affair, which I think is a very interesting dynamic. And I've seen it in play. It's where people intentionally get caught having an affair because they'll go to their partner and say, something's not working. We need to address this. We need to fix this. And that partner doesn't listen, doesn't
Yeah.
understand, gets stubborn, gets in their feels. And whatever the reason, they don't take the desired action that partner A wanted them to. So they go have this affair. And then they get caught again intentionally to say, hey, listen, I wasn't joking. I need this in my life. And if you can't give it to me, I'm going to get it elsewhere. I don't want to leave you. I don't want to disrupt
Yeah.
our family unit, this relationship, whatever it is. And it's interesting. I've heard from so many of our female members over the years something along the lines of, I'm a better mother, lover, and wife because of my affair. And I find that at first it was shocking, but then I come to understand it because if after every weekend you had lousy sex or no sex, and you wake up on Monday and you're going to work and you come home and he's there, that stress builds day after day after day. And if your partner doesn't listen, is incapable, is not willing to make the changes, but yet you love every other aspect, going back to your two truths, what do you do? So traditional people, moral people will say, well, you either compromise, as in, well, you just have a shitty sex life, or you leave him. Okay, so you're going to blow up this beautiful family, potentially with kids, just because this part is missing. And you think we're the bad people, where we're offering them a discreet outlet to fulfill that need and go back to their partner and be the wife, husband that they want to be, can be, and desire to be, but are unable if they have to follow the strict doctrines of monogamy. And in doing so, I think we save more marriages than we end, quite frankly.
I love that, and I think you were joking earlier when you talked about you are a catalyst for relationship, support because it just makes people th but I'm like, I would so see the Ashley Madison version of that. If you expand into,
There's a truth to it. I mean, I do say it glibly, but there's a truth to it because to fix a problem, you have to understand the problem.
yeah.
And just saying infidelity is bad, non-monogamy is bad, or whatever your story is, doesn't shed any light on the issue. And all you're saying is, yes, I know you're upset. I know you're not getting what you want, but just deal with it on your own and don't do anything about it and be happy. Well, that is a recipe for disaster. And that's what led to a lot of Valium use, I think, in the 60s and 70s for a lot of women.
I'm like, "Let's just, be conscious to our lives and enjoy them while we're in them, okay?" Whatever that looks like. Okay, so, I could clearly keep talking to you for a while. I find this endlessly interesting, but I would like to hear from you. Where are you going from here, company-wise, but also you-wise? Like, what is the next
Mm.
unfolding? What's the next sexy unfolding? And then what do we need to make this world a sexier, more loving place? Those are my last 2 questions for you.
Yeah, so I think from a business perspective, you're going to see Ashley Madison continue to lean into the discretion part of her business more so than the infidelity part. I think our 20 plus year story is going to go into a new chapter sooner than later, simply because not anything we desire, but our members are telling us that they're changing our business for us. As I said earlier, 56% of our members this year signed up were single, which is a really fascinating story because here we are, life is short, having an affair, married, dating, everything about our business is predicated on one ideology. And yet people are coming to us for a very different reason because the bright light of discretion offers a lot of different opportunities. And so, as we referenced and talked about the memoir more, those are the people I think are increasingly going to use our service, and we're going to adapt to them. And to give it a real life comparison, if you're familiar with the dating app field, it's very much one of the more popular growing apps. They serve a different constituency. People want the world to know everything about their inside life, and they want to be expressive and show it and revel in it. And that's amazing. That's not our audience. Our audience wants to do a lot of those similar things with similar people, but with discretion. And again, not out of shame or guilt, just out of, you know what, I've lived 20 years online. So if you're 20 years old, yeah, you just haven't gone that far in life. But now I'm 30, now I'm 40, now I'm 50. I got kids, I got a career. I don't ever want my colleagues or people who directly report to me see me on a dating app because that would be traumatic for them. They tell me on a regular basis.
Mm.
And so discretion becomes the thing. So as it pertains to me, you know, I, I honestly, I am one of the luckiest people alive. I have two beautiful children. I have a great co-parenting relationship, and I work for a company that lets me talk to amazing people like you and have these really cool conversations. And I just hope that I get to continue to explore this and have people challenge my thinking because the more I'm challenged, the more I seek to understand, the more I can dig into it and really say, okay, What are you saying, and what can I learn from that? Because that makes me a better person, I think.
By discretion, do you mean, like, normalizing profiles without pictures, or do you? Because like, one of my main things is, like, how do I know I'm not getting murdered? And then, like, for me, I need to be able to, like, see someone's ID, see that they're attached to a LinkedIn if I'm gonna meet a complete stranger out in the world at this point, because
Of
I
course.
have lived such a life online, and I you know,
Yeah, you've got to think. And this is the thing. I have a friend who is recently joining the dating world. I said, one thing you have to remember when you're talking to women and dating, just in general, this doesn't matter in what capacity you operate in. No man has ever thought, "Am I coming home alive from this date?" No man thinks that. It's not even remotely in the consideration where a significant portion of women, that's a thought they have. And when I tell men this, they're like, "No." I go, "Absolutely." It's not that it's going to happen. It's not that they think you're a bad guy, but this does happen. Doesn't happen to men. So they have to think about that. So what we're normalizing from a discretion standpoint is that your business is yours. So people don't necessarily put up profile pictures, but we have a secret locker that if you and I were to connect on Ashley Madison and we were
yeah,
chatting and you feel like, okay, he seems like a normal human being, and I think, oh, she seems like normal, I would send you a key to my locker that lets you see all those images that you would typically see,
yeah,
but under a controlled circumstance. And then if we don't then pursue anything in real life, it doesn't go anywhere. I don't match your aesthetic, needs. I take my key back. You no longer have access to my locker, and that's how our site works for men and women.
mhm,
And it really gives them control over their discretion. So again, it's about inviting those in that you seek, to give experience or have an experience with, but not display it for the whole world.
got
So
it,
it's just
layers.
control and discretion, if that makes any sense.
Okay, that's the part I'm still figuring out in real life. Okay, so those are the
It's hard.
next steps. What about for you? Like, what are you gonna explore next, upcoming?
It's interesting. For me, I don't share too much about what I'm exploring, other than I'm always on the search for someone to be involved in my life that adds to it, doesn't take away. That I'm a big believer. Like to me, the sexiest thing a woman can possibly have is confidence and independence. That they have a life of their own. That they don't need a man. They want someone in their life potentially, but don't need it. And that is a real shift in thinking from 20-year-old Paul. Oh, I want to be with someone who absolutely needs me, and I want to need her. No, I don't. I don't want to need her. I don't need anything. I have an amazing life. I do what I want. I live my life. And that might sound as narcissistic, but no, what I want is someone who has the confidence and independence to live their life and chooses to be with me, doesn't need to be with me. And in finding that to me is an amazing opportunity. And that is the kind of person I want to spend more time with, or people I want to spend more time with.
I think that's a great filter and frame, especially for starting a relationship, right? Like, I know so many people that are like, I want someone I can bind my life to. And I understand why that's the frame that most people are
Mhm.
shopping through, if we want to say it that way. But I'm in the same boat of like, I don't want someone who needs me, like, I don't want to have a succubus
Yeah,
feeling. I certainly don't want to have someone who's gonna think they love me and now hide secrets from me. That's my number one fear. But I think also that, like, if we grow to integrate our lives so that then there are things that, like, we do need from each other down the road, that makes more sense, but, like, not coming from a place of neediness. Not that we would never maybe
exactly.
bind together, but it's like, yeah, starting out from a place of mutual curiosity. I feel that. I feel that strongly. Nice. Well, and hopefully lining up in all the right places, right? Where it's exciting. Um, so I said it, not you, but what do you think we need to make the world at large a sexier, more loving place?
I think vulnerability is the key to it all. Lower your guard and accept that others have differences, and it's okay. You don't have to yum everyone else's yum, but
Yeah.
it's good to hear about them because you never know what you might be interested in.
Yeah. Sometimes the yuck goes to a, "Oh, maybe." I love that. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us here on Sex Stories. Lovers, if you're curious, you can always visit ashleymadison.com, and the link is in the description below. This is truly interesting, wonderful, and I hope if you have updates, you come back to share with us as you will.
Thank you so much. I loved our conversation.
Lovely humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me on the internet for links to all the things: podcast guest submissions, photo sessions, creative coaching, or to wander deeper down my internet rabbit holes. Head to sexstoriespodcast.com and lunarabi.com. Support the show and get ad-free episodes and access to the community live streams at patreon.com/howtowoo. To go deeper, see my exclusive self-portraits, masturbation, meditation, sensation, explorations of edging, or to tell me your most personal pleasures, thoughts, and feelings, maybe you even show me, join me on OnlyFans. Links are in the description below. Remember to tell a friend, leave a review, heart, or thumbs up this show wherever you're listening. It helps us grow, and you know I love watching things grow. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, let me know how you're spreading ripples of love, and remember to share sex stories.